Hello and a very warm welcome, viewers. You're watching Policy Watch. I'm Kriti Mishra. Keeping in view the emerging trends in demographic, socio-economic and other relevant fields in the country, the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment is drawing a national policy for senior citizens, incorporating issues such as financial and food security, healthcare and nutrition, safety and security, housing and welfare as well. Comments of the draft policy are being obtained from the concerned stakeholders such as Central Ministries, departments, state governments and members of the civil society. And to get deeper insights on the topic, I'm joined by Dr. Abhishek Atrey, Advocate, Supreme Court of India, and Chakshu, Head of Outreach, PRS. Welcome to Rajya Television, both of you. And Chakshu, let me come to you first. So the government has released the draft national policy for seniors to support the aging population with specific tailor-made interventions to create a vibrant senior care industry ecosystem. Take us through the salient features of the draft policy for senior citizens.
Even before we get into the draft policy that has been put out by the Ministry for 2020, I thought it'd be useful to just lay down the foundation of what has been, what is the backdrop in which this policy comes about. So this is not the first attempt at putting together a policy framework for senior citizens. And the idea is that the government has been thinking about this issue for more than 2.5 decades. In fact, if we go back, one of the first policies in recent times that came around for senior citizens was in 1999. And I think, it was during that year that the United Nations had declared the year 1999 as the year for older persons. Then, there was a legislative development. In 2007, Parliament passed a law which provided maintenance and security for senior citizens. And the purpose of the law was to fix certain responsibilities for children and relatives to take care of senior citizens. So that was the next step that happened. Thereafter, there was an update in the policy for senior citizens in 2011. And more recently, Parliament is in the process of considering another bill related to senior citizens, which is amending the 2007 Act. And what this particular bill is doing is that it is expanding the scope of people who will be responsible towards senior citizens. It is also putting together a framework for infrastructure development that can happen for taking care of senior citizens. So senior citizen homes or private senior citizens homes for that matter. Now, in your opening remarks, you made reference to as to why a policy like this is important. And, if I look at older documents, the demographic profile of this country is changing. About 500 million young people are there in the country. And the number of older people is also increasing. And the reason that's happening is healthcare is getting better, nutrition is getting better, people are living longer. And, about 1/8 of the older population of the world by 2050 will be, in India. So we need some kind of a holistic framework for the government to look at as to what are the different issues that we need to look at when it comes to senior citizens. And one of the things that the draft policy is putting its focus on is financial security for senior citizens. And financial security becomes important because when people live longer, they would like to be independent. Families are becoming smaller. So what is it that government needs to do to ensure financial security for senior citizens? The government obviously runs a number of schemes. So the Ministry of Social Justice runs schemes in which implementing agencies are given funds for ensuring benefits reach to senior citizens. But beyond pension by the government, what are other things that can be done to ensure financial security for senior citizens is one of the areas of focus in this new draft policy.
Right, absolutely. So financial security is of paramount importance for senior citizens. But before we get into the specifics of this draft policy, Dr. Abhishek, the United Nations Population Fund, in its recent India Aging Report, projected that the elderly population in the country would grow to 158 million by the year 2025. Now, as Chakshu was pointing out, a major reason for the steady growth of the elderly population has been the rise in the life expectancy that is aided by economic growth and enhanced access to healthcare facilities as well. Now, the draft policy for senior citizens has come after almost a decade. What will be the implications of this policy?
In this policy, a lot of changes were done according to age, according to development, and according to present scenario. And moreover, to give effect of this, the present bill of 2020 Act for this Maintenance of Parents and Senior Citizens Act. By this, government amended 2007 Act. In this, basically, care homes were, there is a policy to develop care homes, to develop monitoring, police monitoring also. As far as financial security is concerned, in this draft policy, one important thing which I came to know is to increase area of social CSR, corporate social responsibilities. So in that, to bring a draft rules to bring elderly policy, elderly related policies, the charitable trusts, charitable organizations which are doing work for elderly persons. They will also can take financial security, financial help from corporates. So this is one of the features which will enhance financial security to a certain high level. And informal sector is also bringing under this. Healthcare, under several Ayushman Bharat Mission and several other programs of Government of India. So idea is to bring almost all senior citizens of India to under these policies, like continuous monitoring, daycare home for running a daycare home or shelter homes. A specific guideline should be there. A specific monitoring agency should be there. So by incorporating all these things, and important thing, implementation mechanism, a separate chapter of implementation mechanism is given in this new policies, which were lacking in earlier policy. So at all levels, responsibility of police, responsibility of panchayats, urban local bodies, a directorate, a national council for senior citizens is also being built up. So all these things cumulatively affect the well-being and the well-living of senior citizens. In 2019 Amendment Act, which is, I don't know, is yet to be passed. But in fact, draft bill came in 2018. And in this Amendment Act, the responsibility was not only on the son and daughter, but the son-in-law and daughter-in-law are also included. The responsibility was entrusted on them to take care of senior citizens or their parents. Even the relatives who are dependent on the senior citizens or are in line of hierarchy, who will get benefit of their properties after their demise, they are also held responsible. So by accumulating all these things, pension scheme is being encouraged, charitable organizations are being encouraged, corporate social responsibility funds rules are being given to these organizations. So by cumulative effect, it's a very good policy and a very good effect of a very good plan of the government. I would really
appreciate. As you said, that implementation will be the biggest challenge. But Chakshu, yes, as you said, that sustainable income is a major concern for seniors in India and around the globe. What is the specific recommendation to address this challenge?
There are a range of recommendations that are there in the draft policy. Let me touch upon a few of them. So one of the things that the policy is talking about is how do you increase, or what are the different mechanisms for increasing access to income after you've attained a certain age. Now, one traditional source of income for senior citizens, because they are no longer actively working, is their retirement savings. And the draft policy is, referring to as to what is it that can be done under income tax laws in terms of ensuring that the tax liability on income that they earn out of the retirement saving can be minimized, giving them more access to funds. Now, this is not the first time that this question is coming up. In fact, if I remember, as far as back in 2014, a parliamentary committee had looked at the question of a policy framework for senior citizens. And one of its recommendations was as to what are the kind of exemptions that can be brought about in the Income Tax Act to ensure that senior citizens have access to more funds. Now, over a number of years, experts have thought about as to what is it that senior citizens can do when it comes to having more access to funds. Now, as Abhishek ji was pointing about, was one of the things is, can you gainfully employ them, because retirement age across the sectors is 60, and since they are fit both mentally and physically, can they be gainfully employed in other vocations or occupations where they can contribute to society, and that will also ensure a certain amount of income stream that generates for them. So CSR activities and other activities are something that are being talked about. Experts over the years have also been recommending things like reverse mortgages. Now, what is a reverse mortgage? When you and I go out to buy a house, we take a loan and then we pay back that loan over 20 years or 15 years, and the house becomes ours. Now, in the case of senior citizens, if they need access to funds, and they're already living in a house which is mortgage free, and they are staying in it, can facilities be done wherein the bank gives them a loan or a reverse mortgage for the house that they are currently living in? So till the time they continue to live, the bank keeps giving them a steady stream of income or a lump sum amount, so that they can live a dignified life. And thereafter, when they are no longer there, the bank takes over the possession of the property. So there are different ways in which some of these things can be done. But I also wanted to point out as to in all of whenever we are thinking about a policy, and obviously Abhishek ji's and you are right about the implementation challenges that come up. I think policies that like this also need a much broader outlook, because they tie in not only to, let's say, aspects of a labor force, aspects of our tax system. Geriatric care is supposed to be a much more specialized field which needs to be looked into. So this is, when you're thinking about this policy, or when our viewers who are listening to this program and watching this program, when they're thinking about this policy, they shouldn't think about it in a silo. They should think about where all does it link to. It links to healthcare, it links to access to finance, it links to tax reform. So it is one of those things which has connections in different places, and has to be thought of in a much more holistic sense, rather than only thinking about it that this is a policy for senior citizens.
Well, that's a very important point that you're making, that we have to have a holistic approach. But there's another important element that I'd like to touch upon. Dr. Abhishek, the policy paper also envisages providing support to people in their 60s or 70s to find alternate career options. Now, What are the prospects for second life career?
A very good term for is given in this policy: productive aging. And under that productive aging, the plan is to generate employment for old age persons who are healthy and who can mentally fit to do further work, to give them opportunity to do work. Taxation benefit will be given to them. Skill development programs will be organized for those persons, and for that purpose, help for other charitable organizations, other societies will also be done, So all this by keeping in mind to skill development and productive aging is a fantastic idea nowadays, because nowadays aging after 60 years, no doubt retirement age is 60 years, but in 60 years no person becomes idle. He is still able to do some work at his level. So to use that human resources by providing these much programs, by keeping them in Indian economy to help in Indian economy, it's a very good idea. And if we provide them skill development programs, definitely it will boost our economy also. So under skill development, they can learn new things and they can help in productive India. And that productive aging word is very attractive.
Absolutely. So it will be specific to identify and build the necessary skill sets to meet these specialized service. What kind of training and orientation programs can we have?
When you ask about this question about skill development, to me, it is more about reskilling or acquiring other skills that a senior citizen might need. Because by the age of 60, you've already reached a certain level of professional experience in life, which means, either you retired at in a particular department if you were working, or you acquired a certain amount of skill working, in an organized or an unorganized sector, and now you need to adapt to a certain new style of working. So reskilling is one part of that we need to think about when it comes to this policy. The other part that needs to be thought about is how do you match the senior citizens with the right kind of opportunity? Some senior citizens might not take very kindly to getting themselves reoriented or reskilled. If I already have a certain amount of skill, can something not be found for me where I can utilize and contribute effectively by utilizing the existing skills that I've honed over the last 30, 40 years? That's one part of it. I think the other part of it, when we are thinking about employment opportunities, is second career opportunities for senior citizens. We need to look at them from different lenses. So, for example, senior citizens who are women might have a completely different requirement than from male citizens. Senior citizens in urban areas, semi-urban areas, and rural areas might have a completely different requirement. So this is a policy which will not be a one-size-fit-all policy, but this is a policy which would be, to a large extent, dependent on the implementing agencies who look at as to what are the nuances of the population that they are trying to address. The 2011 census that you were referring to in your opening remarks said that there are about 10.5 crore senior citizens in the country. About a decade later, that number is increasing. But when that number is increasing, there are also technological challenges and advantages that we now have in our favor. So how do you ensure that we can mix those two to ensure that whatever is being thought of in terms of skilling, reskilling, second employment opportunities for senior citizens can be utilized effectively? So technology would also play a role. A broad-based thinking about how can senior citizens contribute to society, could also play a role. For example, young people are learning a certain kind of skill which is valuable because it is valuable to them for their job prospects. Can the same kind of skill be, relearned by a senior citizen? So those are things that we need to think about.
And also you made an important point that not one size fits all. But another important aspect that I'd like to touch upon is about the healthcare facilities, the access to healthcare facilities. Now, Abhishek, India ranked 71 on the Age Watch Index published in 2015. The index covered 91% of world's senior population from 96 countries. How do we ensure improved access to healthcare facilities in India?
In this policy, special stress is given on healthcare policies. Provisions are also there to give directions even to medical insurance companies to incorporate the medical facilities, healthcare facilities to the elderly persons especially. And Ayushman Bharat and Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, there are several other policies of Government of India going on to incorporate those policies and to provide benefit of those policies to elderly persons is also under consideration under these policies. So for healthcare, the main thing, if we go to purchase an insurance policy from any medical insurance company, we see that they increase your premium by your age. But the government has to look into this aspect also to give some benefit in this insurance plan, that all the insurance companies should not fix a state jacket formula for all elderly persons. To insurance should be easily accessible to all the persons, especially senior citizens, because medical insurance is much more needed at that age, not in the stage of below 60. So under these policies, stress is laid down, but let us see how these policies will be implemented, because in even in Amendment Act, there is no much about that on that aspect. Legally, that Amendment Act will help, but on this aspect to provide health care, there is nothing much in that Amendment Act or in 2007 Act. So in this policy, a special chapter is there to provide health care, to provide benefit of several schemes of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and also Minister of Social Justice. But now it's a thing to look into, how government goes into it, how benefit is to be provided to senior citizens of medical insurance.
Right, so we need a very robust structure of Mediclaim policy. That's the point that you're making?
Because no doubt our government hospital, people generally don't trust on government hospitals when time comes to get any medical relief quickly. People look towards private hospitals. So in that case, insurance companies should also be held responsible to provide better terms and conditions for giving medical benefits or insurance policies to elderly persons. It's an area which should be stressed.
Right. So Chakshu, Abhishek is saying that private sector participation in this regard will be very important, especially in designing world-class products, whether insurance or otherwise, and also services for seniors in India. So how do we incentivize the private sector?
So I think, it's a question of, it's not simply a question of incentivizing private sector. I think, if the private sector decides to come into a particular business area, whether that is geriatric care, whether that is healthcare for senior citizens, or whether that is insurance, they would come in when they see that it's a viable business opportunity. I think what needs to be thought of is to how do you create a balance, right? So, for example, if there are 10.5 crore senior citizens in 2011, their population is increasing, so there is a business opportunity. So I'm sure the private sector would come. But the key there would be the balance as to how do you ensure that whatever policies, whether it's insurance, whether it's healthcare, that are being designed, are designed in such a way that they're not exploitative to a senior citizen. If I'm a senior citizen, I'd rather have peace of mind when I get an insurance policy. So better regulation which is easily understood both by the insurance companies and the senior citizens. So that is going to be key. We also need to understand that when we are talking about insurance, or when we're talking about incentivizing the private sector, it has to be on every small thing. So if you go to a hospital, is there a ramp? Because that ramp is not going to be only for a differently abled person. It will also be used by a person who's a slightly of older age, finds it difficult to climb stairs. So it's something as simple as that. Then, we also need to talk about the fact as to can there be specialized schemes that can be rolled out? So the private sector will have some kind of a role to play. The existing government schemes will also have to be realigned to meet this current challenge. And the government will also have to play a role when it comes to, let's say, standardization for old age homes. What should be the design? What should be the standard of geriatric care in hospitals? Because healthcare for senior citizens is of a different type and a different scale. Possibly, they have different kind of complications, or maybe they have multiple complications, or their body responds to it a different way. So, I keep coming back to the fact that this is not going to be something which is you can design and it's going to work for every class of senior citizens.
All right. So on that note, thank you so much for joining us on Policy Watch Show. So long-term vision is required for nurturing and building a robust senior care space in the country through committed action and, of course, timely implementation. That's all we had for you in this edition of Policy Watch. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.